Hi, everybody. Thank you for tuning in, and thank you for joining us for these really important conversations that we're having with lawmakers. I'm Scarlette, and I am working for a really great nonprofit called The Ring of Democracy. And at The Ring of Democracy, we work to engage, educate, organize, and mobilize Black, brown, and historically marginalized communities so that we can better advocate for ourselves in the different arenas of life. So today, with me, I have Dr. Flojaune Cofer. Thank you, Dr. Flo, for joining us.
Thank you, Scarlette, for having me into Ring of Democracy as well. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. So I'm calling you Dr. Flo. That's your name. How are you identified on the ballot?
Yes, I will be on the ballot as Flojaune, Flo in quotes, Cofer, and public health professional is my designation.
Okay. And this is your first campaign?
This is my first campaign. I have helped out on many others.
Yes.
But this is the first time that my name has appeared on a ballot anywhere.
Wow. And you picked a big race.
It's a big race, yes. A city of over 500,000 people.
Right. Why?
Well, my joking answer is always, obviously, because, I'm a little bit ridiculous. Because, people always say, like, who would take on this role and why? But the true answer, right, the non-joking answer is that I love Sacramento. It's a wonderful place to live. It has such diverse and integrated communities of people. You can get food anywhere you want. There are great events happening. There's a lot of energy and spirit here and tight-knit neighborhoods, really great events. Like, this is the type of place that you come and you find your people and you make it home if you're not from here. And if you're from here, you find a reason to stay in many instances. And so I really enjoy being here. And also, we have some challenges ahead of us. And I think I share this optimism and also frustration that many people have of this place is great and it has all the pieces it needs to be as great as it wants to be in the future, and also frustration that it doesn't always seem like we're headed in that direction, and that some of our challenges are getting worse instead of getting better. And so that's really why I decided to run for mayor, because this is my forever home now. I live here, I want to live here for the rest of my life, and I want to be a part of making sure that we are on a path to making it a place that continues to grow in its greatness.
Yeah. Well, that's as good a reason as any, but there's that added challenge that we know your opponent, we've worked with your opponent for years, and he knows the city and he has his connections and things like that. But let's take a moment and get to know you.
Yes.
Who are you?
Yes.
Tell the people who you are and just kind of introduce yourself to folks.
Yes, well, I am originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
I didn't know that.
Yes, I was born and raised in Pittsburgh in the Hill District, where August Wilson wrote his Century series of plays, one for every decade of the 20th century. And so I grew up going to see those shows with my parents. My parents were both public school teachers. My mom taught 8th grade English. My dad taught 8th grade math. And so I grew up in a really tight-knit community, very similar to some of the neighborhoods here in Sacramento. And unfortunately, when I was 11, my dad passed away from heart disease. He was a lifelong smoker, started smoking before the Surgeon General's warning existed. And so one of the first lessons of policy I learned is what can happen when policies don't exist that should exist to protect you. So my dad didn't benefit from what I did being born in 1982 and knowing what cigarettes do to your health and having the benefit of people not being allowed to smoke in every single space that I was moving through. And that makes a difference. And so it's part of the reason why I decided to go into public health, is to really better, focus on how long people live and the quality of life that they have during those years. And that's what brought me to Sacramento 20 years ago to do a fellowship at the Department of Public Health. And then I made it my home for the next 2 decades, and have just loved being here, serving on our boards, committees, and commissions, being involved in our community, from the Urban League Young Professionals to the Sacramento Sister Circle to, serving on the Active Transportation Commission and the Mayor's Climate Committee and our Measure U Tax Advisory Committee. And at the county level, working on the Mental Health Services Act and also working on the Sheriff's Outreach Community Advisory Board. So I just was involved in the community, doing things that mattered, working with the police department on the hiring and equipment and accountability and training when then Chief Daniel Hahn was our police chief, and really trying to address some of the challenges that were happening in our community and learning more about the city and its operations and the opportunities and also some of the challenges. And that's ultimately what kind of brought me to that optimism and also the frustration of wanting to run for mayor, where all of the things that I learned along the way and the gaps that I saw that I felt like a public health approach could really help to fix.
Okay, yeah. I mean, public health is your forte.
Yes.
And you know that there have been a lot of changes with COVID, especially with mental health,
Yes.
especially with
Yes.
homelessness. Can you talk a little bit about your plans? You know, you have talked about the budget. You've talked about what's been going on specifically with the city manager and with how the money is being spent and things like that. But we don't have unlimited money to tackle homelessness.
Yeah.
People have been put out on the streets through no fault of their own most of the time. And it's a big problem. And here you are, you say you want to take a public health approach. Can you tell me about some of your policies, some concrete details as to exactly what you want to do?
Yes, absolutely. I love this question because that's exactly what this is about, is taking it from, hey, we see these challenges, to what are we going to do about it? So I think one of the opportunities that we have is coordination. We need to have short, intermediate, and long-term goals about how we're moving forward on homelessness. One of the big challenges is right now that, you know, we have engaged in sweeps because there are people sometimes who are in places that they can't be permanently. But we have not answered the question of where can people go to be safe and to be cared for. And those places have to be places with dignity. They have to be places where people can come as they are. That means sometimes while they may be using substances, while they have pets, while they have different things going on in their lives, there have to be low barrier opportunities for people to have a place to go. And they also have to be able to charge their cell phones and so have access to electricity and be able to take a shower and be able to wash their clothes and be able to use the bathroom and be able to have the elements of human dignity, and also not to have to constantly transition. These can't be places that are open from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. They need to be places where people can stay for a little while and get stabilized. It's so frustrating sometimes when people get on a list to be able to get housing and other things, and then by the time they reach the top of the list, we can't find them anymore because we've moved them around. That's not efficient. So I really want to focus on taking some of the available parcels that we have across the city and saying what's available for us to be able to do something here. Whether that is a safe ground opportunity similar to what Oregon did with Safe Rest Villages, whether that is a low barrier spot where people can come and we can triage them into services, we need to be thinking about a distributed model of places where people can go and they can be safe, so that when we run into someone, and I'm deeply sympathetic. I woke up a few weeks ago to someone sleeping in my backyard, and I'm trained in behavioral health, so I was able to handle that situation and it was fine, but everybody isn't. And that's a really scary situation to have, where you don't know who the person is, you don't know why they're there, and you want to be able to help. And the answer can't be just telling that person to move along, because they're going to end up in somebody else's yard or somebody else. Like, that's not an answer, right? An answer has to be, here's where we can take you and your belongings, where you can be treated with dignity and respect, and we can get you, we can get you into assessment for services and figure out what the long-term plan is for you. So that's something really important to do. But the thing that was always really frustrating to me is I would run into so many people who would say to me, look, the problem with homelessness is that everybody's using drugs and everybody has mental health issues. And I was like, that's not true. Like, we have thousands of people experiencing homelessness, and yes, they share in common not having a safe and stable place to be, but the reasons and the causes and their life experiences are different in many ways. Some have disabilities, some don't, right? Some have mental health issues, some don't. Some have substance use issues, some don't. And so every time I would hear that, I felt like I was sort of arguing the premise, and then I realized what I was missing. And what I was missing is that for many people, they're not thinking about all 7,000 people who are experiencing homelessness in our city. They're thinking about the 200 people they see the most frequently, the ones who often are experiencing mental health and substance use issues, or both, right? Because they're the most visible. They're also the ones that we've done the least in terms of being able to address, and also are the most costly. So many of the folks that we see regularly on the street, people who may be experiencing psychosis or something else, are frequently in and out of our emergency departments, which is the most expensive way to get health care. They're frequently in and out of our jails, which is the most expensive way to get, and pardon the expression, but housing. Because, right, people aren't there that long, but that's the most expensive way, and it's a terrible model for housing, but for some people that's where they actually end up being inside. And then they're constantly being the target of calls for service from 911 for our police and fire department. And that's the worst way to get social services. So all of those are the most expensive and least effective ways of getting actual long-term services, because they're only designed to address an immediate concern. So you're there, we stabilize you, and then we send you on their way. And so what's happened is these 200 people are costing us somewhere around $1 million per year in the healthcare system, in the county system with the jail, and in our city budget with 911. What would it look like if, when people are being discharged from having their immediate needs be met, that they were actually connected with street medicine, the teams at Ellica, the teams at UC Davis, the teams that are street medicine teams, to be able to provide some ongoing services and help to actually triage them into long-term care, so that within the next 12 to 18 months, we could get people into long-term housing, where they get wraparound services from CalAIM, where they're able to get enhanced case management if they need it, where they're able to qualify for Social Security disability if they're not able to work because their conditions are quite severe. And that's a way for us to be able to take it from being on this hamster wheel of just spending the money every time you're in the ED or the jail or a 911 call, and actually saying, how do we get you out of this cycle that will never get you off the streets, but will just kind of somewhat keep you alive, and actually get you into a place where you can be safe and well cared for. And I think that's something that there's a high appetite for in our business community, in our neighborhood associations, in our nonprofits, with our neighbors, with our city, and with our county. And so it's a matter now of being able to collaborate to do that. And of course, lastly, we have to build more affordable housing, which means we really have to think about how we budget so that we have a pool of funds available, but that also the city is operating in a way that makes it as easy as possible for people to go from point A to point B in the building process. And that requires us to look at our own internal processes for approval to make sure those are streamlined, and also to look for ways that we can help to be able to save money by thinking about how do we bundle the cost of materials, and how do we do some of the things that will help to lower the cost and incentivize people to be able to build or be able to retrofit existing parcels that have buildings on them that are vacant, that we could actually get people into housing.
Mm-hmm. And those are all important things. Like I said, we only have limited money to do that. And it's going to take cuts in certain areas, right? And it's going to take...
It depends, actually, because what I've been saying is, the city budget is $1.7 billion, and only about $700 million of that is general fund. And so some of those are already tied up. But what we're also talking about is actually having strong partnerships. So street medicine is its own entity. And so, so is Ellica, so is UC Davis's street med team. So these are all independent entities that are already doing work. We're now talking about coordinating. So if we set goals together of, look, over the next several years, we'd like to get these 200 people into long-term housing and out of this cycle between these three entities, then we can set up ways to be able to take what we're already doing and connect it to what other people are already doing, so that there's a pipeline into long-term care. CalAIM is already funded by our Medi-Cal system, right? It has enhanced care and case management. It has down payment assistance. So security is obviously a federal program. So a lot of it is not necessarily about, hey, we need more money, although that will always help. But it's about how do we spend the money that we have as efficiently as possible.
Yes, that's important too. How we get money is also important.
Yes.
Talking about revenue.
Yeah.
I don't know how to put this. Businesses, it takes that partnership with businesses, large and small, and that's how we receive our revenue.
Right.
What are some of your plans to work with businesses and grow businesses here in Sacramento?
Great question. One of the things that I'm really interested in doing is having a business advisory council, so that we actually can work to be able to identify what are some of the pain points that our businesses are experiencing. We've been listening to a lot of businesses over the last 18 months and hearing about the challenges with the city, hearing about the timetables to be able to start your business, and how it can take sometimes 6 days for an answer to come back, or 6 months. And so that leaves people waiting to be able to kind of build their clientele and do things over time. We've heard about the startup costs that it takes for the city. city. And one of the questions I've asked is, can we amortize those startup costs over the course of several years so that you have time as you're paying things on to build your clientele, so that you don't have all of these upfront costs while you're still trying to get your feet, grounded and get your business off the ground. So we met with Victor Huang, who is with the Right to Start group. It's a nonprofit that works nationally to be able to focus on how to help new businesses get started and how to create an environment that is really friendly to entrepreneurs. And they have some policies that cities and counties and states can pass to be able to help with that. And we are looking into some of them and being able to explore what we can do to make ourselves a business-friendly environment. But one of the big things I want to do is make sure that when we spend public dollars, those dollars are turning over and being replicated and amplified and multiplied over and over again in our communities. And so one of the examples I use often is Golden One Arena, right? If you're there for a game, you see people buying these almost $20 beers, right? And they're usually beers that are not that don't have headquarters and breweries in Sacramento. But we have local breweries like Oak Park Brew and many others in our community that you could use as the supplier for that. And so if we did, then that money that the city is spending on Golden One would then be you coming and spending money on the beer that's local, which is then supporting jobs that are local and supporting the distillery that's local. And then those things continue to reinvest in the community because those are people who live here who are spending money at the grocery stores and who are spending money at shops right. And so this dollar continues to go over. But if we spend it on Budweiser that's not headquarters here, that dollar is out of Sacramento as soon as you spend it, and it doesn't continue to replicate here. So that's what we want to do, is really think about how are the dollars we're investing to throw events, to be able to support, public entities. How are they also helpful to the businesses we have here? When we bring visitors to our convention center, how are we making sure that they know what's available in the region and that they're being encouraged to patronize our businesses? How do we make this a way that we are actually growing these businesses over time and investing the small sums of economic development money we have to help some of these businesses grow and increase their profit, because that helps us. And what I never want to see happen again is what happened to Rio City Cafe in Old Sacramento, which is the city was the landlord to that restaurant and deferred the maintenance on the deck for years, over and over and over again, to the point where the deck was no longer safe. And so Rio City Cafe had to close down, which means the city lost their rental revenue and lost all the tax revenue from everybody who was going there to eat. And that's a short-sighted way of handling a city budget, because if we had invested the dollars in making sure that they could stay open, we could have actually helped them grow their clientele as more things are coming to town. We're trying to get the Final Four for, women's basketball next year to come to Sacramento, and it would be great if people were going to Rio City Cafe to eat, right? And that would have been a way to be able to help bolster the money that's coming into the city. So those are some of the ways that I think we can better support our local small businesses and create an environment that's supportive of them.
Thank you for that. One thing that I wanted to make sure that I ask you about, you've been accused of being a leftist.
Yes.
Although your opponent is also progressive, so.
Yes.
And also black. He's lighter skinned than you.
Yes.
So we've got
a lot of people don't know he's black, but yes, Kevin McCarty is a member of the Legislative Black Caucus, the California Legislative Black Caucus. He has been for the past 10 years. His father is a black man.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you for that. So we have two black progressives running, but for some reason people are seeing you as, the radical leftist.
Yes. Yes.
And people are seeing you, especially, talking about police. Obviously, black and brown folks, we are very vigilant of what's happening with police. As mayor, you would be working very closely with the police department.
Or with the city manager over the police department.
With the city manager over the police department. But you would have to do with that budget and things like that.
Yes.
Can you talk to me about defunding the police?
Yes, absolutely. So what I have talked about as the plan is keeping the current officers at their current staffing levels, but over time moving money away from especially some of the vacancies. And the reason is this. I experience safety, and you do as well. Like, we as women and femmes, we experience safety very differently than the men often do. And so I think about safety as being more than just what happens after something bad happens. Safety is also preventing what could happen and doesn't have to. And so that's where I want to be able to spend some of our dollars. And so I want to be able to have our Department of Community Response set up to be able to answer some of the calls that our police department is currently setting up. And that actually was not just, a leftist idea. Our former police chief, Daniel Hahn, helped set that department up to do that. The Los Angeles Police Department, which is the largest police department in the state, has said, here's 28 call types. Last March of 2023, they put in the LA Times, here's 28 call types that we don't want to respond to anymore because we don't think we're the right people to, and some other professional should respond to them. So the idea that some of these are lefty policies, yes, they may have started with progressive left organizations, but they've also become mainstream, very common sense approaches to streamlining budgets and spending dollars more appropriately. And that's really what we've been talking about, is taking some of that tension off of the only safety mechanism we have in communities is police, and saying police are a part of public safety, but they're not the totality of it. And also finding ways to be able to make sure that our police department is operating in safer ways so we don't see racial patterns and outcomes. We're not seeing what we see currently in Sac PD, which is that black men, for example, make up 5% of the population, 40% of the stops, and 82% of those stops result in no citation being offered, which is far higher than it is, for example, for white men, right? So it seems like when our police department is dealing with black men in traffic stops, they're a lot less efficient with it. And so I want us to be more efficient with our dollars, and I want us to be able to spend those dollars in ways that support public health.
Thank you. Can you let the people know how to find more information about you?
Absolutely. You can find more information about our campaign at flowformayor.com. That's FLOFORMAYOR.com. We have, as of taping, 42 days left in the election and 13 days until ballots are mailed. So we encourage you to find more information about the campaign. And if you like what you see, to join us, because we are a people-powered campaign that is really attempting to bring everyone across the city together to be able to collaborate. So often we're not asked how we can help, and we are one of the greatest assets that Sacramento has, and that's how I want us to govern. So I say to people all the time that we are running for mayor and that this is our city and we have a lot to be able to contribute, and I would love to be able to earn your vote over the next 42 days for you to be able to be a partner with me in how we govern this city and take care of our young people, take care of our elders, and make sure that this is a place that is really great, because it's more than the kings that make us Sacramento proud.
Great. Thank you so much for sitting down, Dr. Flo.
Thank you.